The email arrived at 7:43 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in March. Subject line: Immediate meeting required. Conference room B. No context, no explanation. Just a sterile corporate summons that would change everything. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. Sarah Martinez had been with TechFlow Dynamics for 8 years. 8 years of 12-hour days, weekend, emergencies, and building their entire data infrastructure from scratch. She'd started as a junior systems analyst and worked her way up to Senior Director of Technology Operations, becoming the person everyone called when things went wrong, which was often. That morning, she grabbed her coffee and walked into conference. Room B, expecting another crisis to solve. Instead, she found 3 people waiting. James Patterson, the chief technology officer who'd hired her, Linda Chen, the head of human resources she'd worked with on countless projects, and someone she didn't recognize, a thin man in an expensive suit with cold eyes and a briefcase. "Sarah, please sit down," Patterson said, avoiding eye contact. His usual warmth was gone, replaced by the mechanical tone of someone reading from a script. The stranger opened his briefcase and pulled out a manila folder. "Ms. Martinez, I'm Robert Blackwood from Meridian Consulting Group. We've been brought in to evaluate TechFlow's operational efficiency." Sarah felt her stomach drop. Meridian was known throughout Silicon Valley as the cleanup crew, the consultants companies hired when they wanted to slash costs and didn't want their own executives getting their hands dirty. Due to current market conditions and the need for strategic cost reductions, Blackwood continued, your position has been identified as redundant. Your employment with TechFlow Dynamics is terminated effective immediately. The words hit like a physical blow. Sarah stared at Patterson, waiting for him to say something, to defend her, to acknowledge what she'd built for this company. He studied his hands. "This is a mistake," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the shock. "I manage the entire back-end infrastructure, the cloud migration project, the security protocols, the disaster recovery systems, all of which can be consolidated under existing personnel," Blackwood interrupted. "We've identified significant overlap in responsibilities." Sarah almost laughed. Overlap? She was the only person in the building who understood half the systems keeping TechFlow running. The existing personnel Blackwood mentioned were junior, developers who could barely handle routine maintenance. Chen slid a packet across the table. "Your severance package includes 3 months' salary and comprehensive benefits continuation. There's also a non-disclosure agreement and non-compete clause." Sarah flipped through the pages, her mind racing. 3 months for 8 years of service. The non-compete would prevent her from working for any of TechFlow's competitors for 18 months, essentially blacklisting her from every major tech company in the region. "I need time to review this." "I'm afraid that's not possible," Blackwood said. "This is a standard package. Sign today, or the offer is withdrawn." The ultimatum was delivered with practiced indifference. Sarah realized this wasn't a negotiation, it was an execution. She looked at Patterson one more time. "Jim, you know what I've done for this company. The Aurora client, remember when their entire system crashed 3 weeks before their IPO? I worked 72 hours straight to save that contract. The Zenith integration that everyone said was impossible? I made it work. The security breach last year that could have destroyed us." "Sarah, please," Patterson finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Just sign the papers." The betrayal cut deeper than the termination. This wasn't just about cost reduction. This was personal. But Sarah had learned long ago not to show weakness in corporate boardrooms. She signed the papers. Security escorted her to her office where a cardboard box waited on her desk. 8 years of work life reduced to personal items and a small plant she'd kept alive through 3 office relocations. Her computer access had already been revoked, her company phone deactivated, her parking pass canceled. The walk to her car, felt like a funeral march. Colleagues she'd worked with for years avoided eye contact, suddenly fascinated by their computer screens or urgent phone calls. Word traveled fast in corporate environments, and nobody wanted to be seen fraternizing with the recently deceased. That evening, Sarah sat in her home office staring at her personal laptop. The non-compete agreement lay on the desk beside her, along with contact information for various headhunters and career counselors. The rational part of her mind said to start networking, update her resume, begin the job search process that every terminated executive goes through. But rational thinking had been replaced by something else, a cold, calculating anger that she'd never felt before. Sarah had always played by the rules. She'd been the team player, the problem solver, the one who stayed late and came in early. She'd sacrificed personal relationships, missed family events, and put tech flow before everything else. And this was her reward. She opened her laptop and began researching Meridian Consulting Group. Blackwood's LinkedIn profile showed a career built on corporate downsizing, with testimonials from executives praising his surgical precision in reducing operational costs. His bio mentioned prestigious MBA programs and strategic consulting experience, but Sarah noticed something interesting. No technical background whatsoever. This was a man who understood spreadsheets but not systems, who could cut costs but couldn't build anything. He was exactly the type of consultant who destroyed companies while optimizing them to death. Over the next 3 days, Sarah watched her phone ring with calls from confused clients and panicked vendors. The junior developers were struggling with systems they barely understood, and the cracks were already showing. But she didn't answer. Her employment was terminated, her access revoked, and her obligations ended. On Thursday, Sarah received a call from Marcus Rodriguez, a former colleague who'd left TechFlow 2 years earlier to join Quantum Solutions, one of the region's fastest-growing tech companies. "I heard what happened," Marcus said. "That's insane. You were the backbone of that place." Apparently, I was redundant. "Right. Look, I can't say much over the phone, but we should meet for coffee. There's something you need to know about what's happening in the industry." They met at a small cafe in downtown Seattle, far from the tech corridor where everyone knew everyone. Marcus looked around nervously before speaking. "Quantum's been watching TechFlow for months," he said quietly. "There's talk of an acquisition." Sarah felt a spark of interest. "What kind of talk?" "The serious kind. 750 million serious." "But Sarah, they're not interested in TechFlow's technology or client base. They want something else." "What?" Marcus leaned forward. "Market position. TechFlow has contracts with 3 major aerospace companies and 2 defense contractors. Those relationships are worth more than all of TechFlow's intellectual property combined. Quantum's been trying to break into that sector for years." The pieces began falling into place. So they acquire TechFlow, absorb the client contracts, then shut down the redundant operations. Exactly. Classic consolidation play. But here's the thing. Our due diligence team has been trying to assess TechFlow's technical capabilities for the acquisition. Every analysis comes back with the same problem, which is, nobody can figure out how your systems actually work. The documentation is incomplete, the architecture is undocumented, and the current team doesn't understand the integration points. From an acquisition standpoint, TechFlow looks like a technical disaster waiting to happen. Sarah almost smiled. She'd built those systems organically over 8 years. Each component customized for specific client needs, each integration crafted to solve unique problems. The elegance was in the simplicity, but only if you understood the underlying logic. Without proper technical leadership, Marcus continued, Quantum's acquisition could turn into a nightmare. They'd be buying a $750 million house with a foundation nobody understands. Sarah stared into her coffee thinking. TechFlow had fired her to cut costs, but in doing so, they'd created a much bigger problem. The company was now technically defenseless, managed by consultants who understood efficiency but not engineering. Marcus, hypothetically speaking, if someone wanted to help Quantum understand TechFlow's technical architecture, how would that work? Marcus raised an eyebrow. Hypothetically, Quantum pays very well for specialized consulting, especially on potential acquisitions. They have a whole division dedicated to technical due diligence. And the non-compete issue? Consulting isn't employment. As long as you're not working directly for a competitor, you're providing expert knowledge to facilitate a business transaction. Completely different legal territory. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. That night, Sarah drafted an email to Dr. Jennifer Walsh, Quantum Solutions Chief Technology Officer. She'd met Walsh at industry conferences and respected her reputation for technical excellence and strategic thinking. The email was simple. Dr. Walsh, I understand Quantum is evaluating opportunities in the aerospace integration market. Given my recent departure from TechFlow Dynamics, I may be able to provide insights that would be valuable to your assessment process. Would you be interested in a confidential discussion? The response came within 2 hours. Sarah, I've been hoping to hear from you. Can we meet tomorrow? The meeting took place at Quantum's headquarters, a gleaming complex that made TechFlow's offices look dated and cramped. Walsh was a woman in her 50s with silver hair and intense brown eyes, the kind of executive who'd earned her position through technical competence rather than corporate politics. I'm going to be direct, Walsh said after the introductions. We're considering an acquisition of TechFlow Dynamics, but our technical assessment has raised serious concerns. Their systems appear to be held together with digital duct tape, and nobody currently employed there seems to understand how anything works. Sarah chose her words carefully. TechFlow's architecture is actually quite robust, but it was designed by someone who's no longer with the company. The current team inherited systems they weren't trained to maintain. That someone being you? That someone being me. Walsh leaned back in her chair. Sarah, I'm going to make you an offer. Quantum needs a senior technical consultant for strategic acquisitions. The position pays $200,000 plus equity, with a specific focus on aerospace and defense sector opportunities. Interested? The irony was perfect. TechFlow had fired Sarah to save money, and now their potential acquirer was offering to pay her significantly more than her previous salary to help them understand what they were buying. Very interested. Good. Your first assignment is conducting a comprehensive technical audit of TechFlow Dynamics. I want to know everything: system architecture, security vulnerabilities, integration dependencies, technical debt, and most importantly, what it would take to migrate their client contracts to our platform. Sarah felt a cold satisfaction spreading through her chest. TechFlow had treated her like a disposable asset, but now she was positioned to determine their fate. The company that had discarded her was about to discover just how valuable she'd been. Over the next 6 weeks, Sarah threw herself into the technical audit with methodical precision. She analyzed every system she'd built, documented every vulnerability she'd been requesting budget to fix, and identified every single point of failure that TechFlow's current team was unaware of. The report she compiled was devastating. TechFlow's infrastructure, while functional, was completely dependent on institutional knowledge that no longer existed within the company. Critical systems had no backup operators, documentation was incomplete or missing entirely, and the security protocols were based on configurations that only Sarah understood. More damaging was her analysis of TechFlow's client relationships. The aerospace contracts that made the company attractive for acquisition were built on technical capabilities that the current team couldn't maintain. Without proper technical leadership, those contracts were at serious risk. But Sarah's report went beyond mere technical assessment. She provided Quantum with a detailed roadmap for acquiring TechFlow's client contracts while avoiding the technical liabilities. The strategy was elegant in its simplicity. Acquire the company, immediately migrate the valuable clients to Quantum's superior infrastructure, then shut down TechFlow's problematic legacy systems. The financial projections were compelling. Instead of a risky $750 million acquisition of a technically unstable company, Quantum could spend the same amount to acquire valuable contracts and eliminate a potential competitor in a single transaction. Walsh reviewed the report with obvious satisfaction. "This is exactly what we needed. Sarah, you've potentially saved us from a very expensive mistake while showing us how to turn this into a strategic victory." "I'm just providing technical analysis." "You're providing justice," Walsh said with a slight smile. "Companies that don't value their technical talent deserve what happens to them." The acquisition announcement came on a Friday morning in June, exactly 3 months after Sarah's termination. TechFlow Dynamics would be acquired by Quantum Solutions for $750 million, with the transaction expected to close within 60 days. Sarah watched the announcement from her new office at Quantum, where she'd been working for 6 weeks as senior technical consultant. Her phone buzzed with messages from former colleagues expressing shock, excitement, and in some cases concern about their futures. She didn't respond to any of them. The due diligence process moved quickly, with Quantum's team conducting detailed assessments of TechFlow's operations, client relationships, and technical infrastructure. Sarah participated in every meeting, providing insights that only someone with intimate knowledge of the systems could offer. Patterson and his executive team seemed confident that the acquisition would secure their positions and validate their cost-cutting strategies. They had no idea that the consultant who'd recommended Sarah's termination had actually made their company more vulnerable, not more efficient. During one particularly revealing meeting, Blackwood presented his optimization analysis to Quantum's acquisition team. He outlined how TechFlow's operational efficiency had improved since eliminating redundant technical positions, using Sarah's termination as a prime example of strategic cost reduction. Sarah listened to the presentation with clinical detachment, taking notes on every claim Blackwood made about TechFlow's improved efficiency. She would use those claims later, when Quantum's integration team discovered just how inefficient TechFlow had actually become. The technical integration planning began immediately after the acquisition announcement. Sarah led Quantum's team through detailed assessments of TechFlow's client requirements, system dependencies, and migration timelines. What they discovered validated every concern in her original report. TechFlow's current team had been struggling to maintain systems they didn't understand, relying on hastily written patches and workarounds that created new problems while solving old ones. The Aurora client contract, the same one Sarah had saved, with 72 hours of emergency work, was particularly problematic. The integration systems that connected Aurora's operations to TechFlow's platform were failing regularly, requiring constant manual intervention that the current team couldn't provide effectively. Sarah documented every failure, every workaround, and every instance where TechFlow's promises to clients exceeded their technical capabilities. The evidence painted a picture of a company in technical decline, held together by desperation rather than competence. The acquisition closed on schedule, with TechFlow's executives celebrating what they believed was validation of their strategic vision. Patterson gave interviews to industry publications about the successful outcome of their efficiency initiatives, crediting Meridian Consulting Group's recommendations for making the company attractive to acquirers. Sarah read those interviews with grim amusement. Patterson had no idea what was coming next. Sarah's first day as an official Quantum employee was also her last day of subtlety. The acquisition had closed, and now the real work began, systematically dismantling everything TechFlow had built, while preserving the pieces worth keeping. Dr. Walsh assembled the integration team in Quantum's main conference room. The table was surrounded by project managers, technical architects, and business analysts, all focused on a single objective: extract maximum value from the TechFlow acquisition while minimizing operational disruption. "Ladies and gentlemen," Walsh began, We now own TechFlow Dynamics and everything that comes with it. Our challenge is migrating their client relationships to our platform while maintaining service continuity. Sarah will lead the technical assessment. Sarah stood and activated the wall display, revealing a comprehensive diagram of TechFlow's system architecture. The room fell silent as the complexity became apparent. Dozens of interconnected systems, custom integrations, and proprietary solutions that had evolved over nearly a decade. TechFlow's infrastructure operates on what I call artisanal engineering, Sarah explained. Each system was custom-built to solve specific client problems, with minimal documentation and significant interdependencies. The current team has been maintaining these systems through trial and error. David Kim, Quantum's lead systems architect, studied the diagram with obvious concern. How is any of this scalable? It looks like every client has their own unique implementation. Because they do. TechFlow specialized in bespoke solutions rather than standardized products. It worked when they had engineers who understood the underlying logic, but those engineers are no longer with the company. Sarah clicked to the next slide, showing TechFlow's current organizational chart. The technical team consisted of 8 junior developers, 2 systems administrators, and 1 overworked engineering manager named Trevor Hayes, who'd been promoted far beyond his capabilities after Sarah's departure. Mr. Hayes has been attempting to manage systems he didn't help design, with a team that lacks institutional knowledge. The results have been predictable. The next slide showed incident reports from TechFlow's client support system. In the 3 months since Sarah's termination, system outages had increased by 40%, client complaints had doubled, and 2 major clients had initiated contract reviews due to service degradation. "My God," whispered Maria Santos, Quantum's client, relations director. "How are they still operating?" "Barely," Sarah replied. "They're essentially running on momentum from systems I built, but that momentum is running out. The question is whether we want to inherit these problems or solve them." Walsh leaned forward. "What do you recommend?" Sarah had spent weeks preparing for this moment. Complete migration. We extract TechFlow's clients and transition them to our infrastructure within 90 days. We salvage any valuable intellectual property, retain key personnel who understand the client relationships, and shut down everything else. The room buzzed with whispered conversations. What Sarah was proposing wasn't just an acquisition integration, it was corporate surgery, cutting away everything problematic while preserving only the profitable organs. "That's incredibly aggressive," said Robert Chen, Quantum's head of operations. 90 days to migrate enterprise clients? The risk of service disruption could destroy those relationships. Sarah smiled coldly. The risk of service disruption already exists. TechFlow's current team can't maintain the systems those clients depend on. We're not creating risk, we're inheriting it. The question is whether we manage that risk proactively or wait for it to explode. She clicked to a new slide showing detailed analysis of TechFlow's 3 largest contracts: Aurora Aerospace, Zenith Defense Systems, and Pinnacle Manufacturing. Combined, these 3 clients represented 60% of TechFlow's revenue, and the primary reason Quantum had pursued the acquisition. Aurora's contract expires in 6 months, Sarah continued. Their integration platform has suffered 8 major outages in the past 90 days. Zenith is already conducting vendor reviews after a security incident that took their procurement system offline for 12 hours. Pinnacle has been pushing for infrastructure upgrades that TechFlow can't deliver. The implications were clear. TechFlow's most valuable clients were already looking for alternatives, not because they wanted to leave, but because TechFlow could no longer serve their needs effectively. "If we act quickly," Sarah said, "we can position ourselves as the solution to problems these clients are already experiencing. Instead of disruption, we're offering rescue." Walsh nodded slowly. "Sarah, I want you to draft a complete migration plan. Include timelines, resource requirements, and risk mitigation strategies. We'll review it with the executive team next week. The meeting adjourned, but Sarah remained behind as the room emptied. Walsh approached her with a curious expression. That was quite a presentation. I'm curious. How do you feel about recommending the destruction of a company you helped build? Sarah considered the question carefully. TechFlow destroyed itself when it decided technical expertise was disposable. I'm just documenting the consequences of that decision. And if some of your former colleagues lose their jobs in this process, they'll lose their jobs anyway when TechFlow collapses under its own technical debt. At least this way, some of them might have opportunities to join our team. Walsh smiled approvingly. I like your way of thinking. Sarah, I want you to know that your work on this acquisition has been exceptional. The board is impressed with your analysis and strategic recommendations. Over the following week, Sarah threw herself into developing the migration plan with obsessive detail. She mapped every system dependency, identified every potential failure point, and created contingency strategies for every conceivable problem. But she also did something else. She began reaching out to TechFlow's clients directly. Her first call was to Elizabeth Parker, Aurora Aerospace's Chief Information Officer. Sarah had worked closely with Parker during the original integration project and had maintained a professional relationship even after leaving TechFlow. Sarah, I heard you were with Quantum now. How are you adjusting? Very well, thank you. Elizabeth, I'm calling because I understand Aurora has been experiencing some technical challenges with the TechFlow integration. There was a pause. That's an understatement. We've had more problems in the past 3 months than we had in the previous 3 years. The current team doesn't seem to understand how the systems work. I imagine that's frustrating, especially given Aurora's upcoming expansion into commercial aerospace. It's more than frustrating. It's becoming a business risk. We're losing confidence in TechFlow's ability to support our growth. Sarah chose her words carefully. Elizabeth, I can't discuss specifics, but I think you should know that Quantum Solutions has acquired TechFlow. We're planning a comprehensive infrastructure upgrade that should address the reliability issues you've been experiencing. Really? When? Soon. I'll be leading the technical transition personally. Would you be interested in a preliminary discussion about Aurora's requirements? The relief in Parker's voice was obvious. Absolutely. Sarah, having you back involved in our systems would solve a lot of problems. Similar conversations with Zenith and Pinnacle yielded similar results. TechFlow's most important clients were not only willing to work with Quantum, they were eager to escape the technical problems that had plagued them since Sarah's departure. Meanwhile, at TechFlow headquarters, the mood was increasingly desperate. Trevor Hayes had been promoted to acting Chief Technology Officer after the acquisition, but the title couldn't compensate for his lack of experience with the systems he was supposed to manage. Sarah learned about TechFlow's internal struggles through Marcus Rodriguez, who maintained contacts within the company despite his departure. The stories he shared painted a picture of mounting chaos. Trevor's been working 18-hour days trying to keep everything running, Marcus reported during one of their coffee meetings. The junior developers are scared to touch anything critical because they don't understand how it works. They've been calling external consultants for problems that should take minutes to solve. What about Patterson and the executive team? Oblivious. They think the technical problems are just integration challenges that will resolve once Quantum takes over operations. They have no idea how bad things really are. Sarah felt a cold satisfaction. TechFlow's executives had trusted Meridian Consulting Group's assessment that technical personnel were redundant, and now they were discovering the cost of that decision. The migration plan Sarah submitted to Quantum's executive team was a masterpiece of strategic planning. It outlined a 90-day process that would transition all major clients to Quantum's infrastructure while maintaining full service continuity. The plan's brilliance lay in its structure. Rather than attempting to fix TechFlow's problematic systems, Quantum would build parallel infrastructure using their own proven technologies. Clients would be migrated gradually, with extensive testing and rollback capabilities to ensure zero service disruption. More importantly, the plan positioned Sarah as the indispensable expert who could execute the migration successfully. Every technical decision, every client interaction, and every system modification would require her approval and oversight. Walsh presented the plan to Quantum's board of directors, who approved it unanimously. The financial projections were compelling. Instead of inheriting TechFlow's technical debt, Quantum would eliminate it while strengthening their own market position. The official announcement came on a Monday morning. Quantum Solutions would be implementing a comprehensive infrastructure modernization for all former TechFlow clients, led by a team of senior engineers with deep expertise in aerospace and defense applications. Sarah's name was prominently featured in the announcement as Senior Technical Director for Strategic Integration. The press release highlighted her 8 years of experience with TechFlow's systems and her role in designing the original client implementations. The announcement sent shockwaves through TechFlow's remaining staff. They realized, perhaps for the first time, that their former colleague hadn't just found a new job. She had become their replacement. Patterson called an emergency meeting that afternoon. The conference room was packed with anxious employees, all wondering what the announcement meant for their futures. Sarah heard about the meeting from Marcus, who still had friends in the company. Patterson tried to reassure everyone that their jobs were secure, Marcus reported. He said the integration was just a technology upgrade and that TechFlow would continue operating as a Quantum subsidiary. Did anyone believe him? Not really. Everyone knows the writings on the wall. Half. The technical team is already updating their resumes. Sarah felt a moment of sympathy for her former colleagues, but it passed quickly. They had witnessed her termination and said nothing. They had watched the company's technical capabilities deteriorate and done nothing. They had chosen survival over solidarity, and now they were facing the consequences. The client meetings began the following week. Sarah found herself in the strange position of returning to familiar conference rooms and speaking with people she'd worked with for years, but now representing their new service provider. The Aurora meeting was particularly surreal. Sarah sat across from Elizabeth Parker and her team in the same conference room where she'd presented countless technical updates as a TechFlow employee. But now she wore a Quantum badge and carried business cards with a new title. Sarah, we're thrilled to have you back working on our systems, Parker said. The past few months have been challenging, to put it mildly. I understand completely. The transition has been difficult for everyone, but I want to assure you that Quantum is committed to not just restoring the reliability you expect, but improving on it significantly. Sarah presented Aurora with a detailed migration plan that would move their entire integration platform to Quantum's infrastructure within 60 days. The new system would be faster, more secure, and infinitely more reliable than what TechFlow had been providing. This looks incredible, said Michael Torres, Aurora's senior systems engineer. But can you really implement all of this in 60 days? Michael, I designed the original integration. I know every component, every dependency, and every potential issue. More importantly, Quantum has the engineering resources and infrastructure that TechFlow never had. The meeting concluded with Aurora signing a formal agreement for the migration. Similar meetings with Zenith and Pinnacle yielded similar results. Within 2 weeks, Sarah had secured commitments from all 3 major clients to transition to Quantum's platform. But Sarah's real victory came when she received an unexpected phone call from Trevor Hayes. Sarah, I hope you don't mind me calling directly. I need to ask for your help. The desperation in his voice was unmistakable. Trevor had been thrown into a position he wasn't qualified for, managing systems he didn't understand, with clients, growing increasingly frustrated with service problems. What can I do for you, Trevor? The Aurora integration is failing. We've had 3 major outages this week, and I can't figure out what's causing them. Elizabeth Parker is threatening to Terminate the contract early if we can't stabilize the system. Sarah smiled. Aurora's contract was already being migrated to Quantum, but Trevor didn't know that yet. Trevor, those outages are probably related to the database clustering configuration. There's a memory leak in the connection pooling that only manifests under high load. How do I fix it? It's complicated. You'd need to modify the connection management code and reconfigure the clustering parameters. It's not something I can explain over the phone. There was a long pause. Sarah, would you consider consulting for us, just until we get things stabilized? The irony was perfect. TechFlow had fired Sarah to reduce costs, and now they wanted to hire her back as an expensive consultant to fix problems that only existed because they'd fired her in the first place. I'm afraid that's not possible, Trevor. I'm fully committed to Quantum's integration project. But I wish you the best of luck. Sarah ended the call and sat back in her chair, savoring the moment. TechFlow was discovering what she'd always known. That cutting technical expertise to save money was the most expensive mistake a technology company could make. The systematic destruction of TechFlow was proceeding exactly as planned, but Sarah wasn't finished yet. The real devastation was still to come. The first domino fell on a Thursday afternoon in August. Aurora Aerospace officially terminated their contract with TechFlow, citing repeated service failures and loss of confidence in technical capabilities. The termination notice, delivered via certified mail, included a detailed list of system outages, missed deadlines, and unfulfilled promises that had accumulated over the past 5 months. Sarah read the termination letter from her office at Quantum, having received a courtesy copy as Aurora's new technical partner. The language was clinical and professional, but she could sense Elizabeth Parker's frustration between the lines. Aurora had been patient, giving TechFlow multiple opportunities to resolve their technical problems, but patience had limits. What made the termination particularly devastating for TechFlow was the timing. Aurora represented 38% of their annual revenue, and their contract included a clause requiring 60 days' notice for termination. TechFlow would continue receiving payments for 2 more months while providing services they could barely maintain, knowing that their largest client was already transitioning to a competitor. Patterson's response was predictably desperate. He called an emergency board meeting and hired a crisis management firm to help navigate the disaster. The press release TechFlow issued attempted to frame Aurora's departure as a mutual decision to pursue different strategic directions, but industry insiders saw through the corporate spin immediately. Sarah watched Patterson's crisis unfold, with clinical detachment. She had warned him about the technical risks of eliminating experienced personnel, but he had chosen to trust Meridian's cost-cutting recommendations instead. Now he was learning that some costs couldn't be cut without destroying the foundation they supported. The Aurora termination triggered a cascade of events that TechFlow couldn't control. Zenith Defense Systems, already conducting a vendor review, accelerated their timeline and began formally evaluating alternatives. Pinnacle Manufacturing's executives started questioning whether TechFlow could support their upcoming expansion project. More damaging than the client's concerns were the internal effects. TechFlow's remaining technical staff realized that the company's largest contract had been lost due to problems they couldn't solve. Morale collapsed, and resumes began circulating as employees sought positions with more stable organizations. Sarah received calls from 3 former TechFlow colleagues that week, all asking about opportunities at Quantum. She listened to their concerns with apparent sympathy while taking careful notes about TechFlow's deteriorating situation. "It's chaos over there," confided Rebecca Liu, a systems administrator who had worked under Sarah for 4 years. "Trevor's completely overwhelmed, and the junior developers are afraid to touch anything critical. We're basically waiting for the next major failure." "I'm sorry to hear that, Rebecca. It sounds like management made some unfortunate decisions. They destroyed the team. Everyone knew you were irreplaceable, but they fired you anyway. Now we're all paying the price." Sarah offered to forward Rebecca's resume to Quantum's HR department, knowing that hiring TechFlow refugees would provide valuable intelligence about the company's final collapse, while demonstrating Quantum's superior employee value proposition. Meanwhile, Sarah's migration project was proceeding flawlessly. Aurora's systems had successfully transitioned to Quantum's infrastructure 2 weeks ahead of schedule, with zero service disruption and significantly improved performance. The migration served as a powerful demonstration of Quantum's technical capabilities and Sarah's project management expertise. Dr. Walsh reviewed the Aurora migration results with obvious satisfaction. "Sarah, this is exactly what we hoped for when we hired you. Aurora's performance metrics have improved across every category since the migration. The improvement reflects the difference between maintaining legacy systems and building purpose-designed infrastructure. Aurora's requirements haven't changed, but our ability to meet them has. I want you to present these results to the board next week. This project is becoming a model for how we handle strategic acquisitions." Sarah nodded, understanding the implications. Her success with the TechFlow acquisition was establishing her reputation within Quantum as a strategic asset, someone who could identify valuable acquisition targets while minimizing integration risks. The board presentation went exceptionally well. Sarah outlined the Aurora migration timeline, demonstrated the performance improvements, and showed the financial benefits of transitioning clients to Quantum's infrastructure rather than inheriting problematic legacy systems. "Ms. Martinez," said board member Catherine Williams, "your approach to this acquisition has been innovative and highly effective. Have you identified other potential opportunities where this model might apply?" Sarah had anticipated the question. There are several mid-sized technology companies in similar situations, organizations that have valuable client relationships but lack the technical infrastructure to maintain them effectively. The acquisition model we've developed could be applied to create significant value while eliminating competitors. The board members exchanged glances, recognizing the strategic potential Sarah was describing. She wasn't just solving the TechFlow problem, she was creating a replicable framework for growth through strategic acquisition. 2 weeks later, Zenith Defense Systems made their decision. They would be terminating their TechFlow contract and transitioning to Quantum Solutions, effective immediately. Unlike Aurora's gradual transition, Zenith demanded emergency migration services to avoid any service disruption during their contract change. Sarah found herself working 18-hour days to execute Zenith's emergency migration, but the challenge was exhilarating rather than exhausting. She was demonstrating her value to Quantum while delivering the final blow to TechFlow's viability. The Zenith migration required coordination between multiple departments at Quantum, creating opportunities for Sarah to work directly with senior executives across the organization. Her reputation as a problem solver and strategic thinker spread throughout the company. "Sarah's become indispensable," Walsh mentioned during an executive team meeting. "She understands both the technical and business aspects of these complex migrations. We need to make sure we retain her long-term." The retention discussion led to Sarah receiving a promotion to Vice President of Strategic Development, with equity compensation that far exceeded anything TechFlow could have offered. The promotion came with expanded responsibilities, including identifying and evaluating future acquisition targets. Sarah's new role provided her with resources she'd never had as a TechFlow employee: unlimited budget for technical infrastructure, a team of senior engineers, and direct access to Quantum's executive decision-making process. She was building something far more impressive than anything she'd created at TechFlow, but the most satisfying aspect of her promotion was the timing. Sarah received her new title and compensation package on the same day that Pinnacle Manufacturing announced their decision to terminate their TechFlow contract. With all 3 major clients gone, TechFlow's revenue had dropped by 74%. The company that had fired Sarah to reduce costs was now facing bankruptcy because they'd eliminated the expertise needed to maintain their most valuable relationships. Patterson made one final attempt to save the company by reaching out to Sarah directly. His call came on a Friday evening, when Sarah was reviewing architectural plans for Quantum's new data center, a facility that would house the systems formerly managed by TechFlow. "Sarah, I know this is awkward, but I need to ask you something." She recognized the defeat in his voice. "What can I do for you, Jim? Is there any way we can work together? I mean, could Quantum consider keeping TechFlow as a subsidiary rather than whatever this is?" Sarah almost laughed. Patterson still didn't understand what had happened. TechFlow wasn't being absorbed or merged, it was being systematically dismantled, with its valuable pieces integrated into a superior organization. "Jim, that decision isn't mine to make. Quantum's integration strategy was determined by their board of directors based on technical and financial analysis. But you could recommend something, couldn't you? You know these systems better than anyone." "I know the systems I built? Yes. But those systems are being replaced with better ones. TechFlow's infrastructure was never designed to scale the way Quantum's business requires." There was a long pause. "Sarah, I want you to know that I regret how things ended between us. The board was under pressure to cut costs, and Meridian convinced us that—" "Jim, I appreciate the apology, but it's not necessary. Everything worked out for the best." Sarah ended the call and returned to her architectural plans. Patterson's apology was meaningless. Corporate executives who made strategic decisions based on consultant recommendations rather than operational reality deserved the consequences of their choices. The final chapter of TechFlow's collapse began in September. With their major clients gone and their technical team scattered, the company filed for bankruptcy protection. The filing listed assets of $12 million and liabilities of $43 million, creating a deficit that made liquidation inevitable. Sarah attended the bankruptcy auction as Quantum's representative, authorized to bid on any intellectual, property, or physical assets that might be valuable. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was now in a position to purchase the company that had discarded her. The auction was sparsely attended. TechFlow's primary assets were client contracts that had already been terminated and technical systems that only Sarah understood. The few items of value, servers, networking equipment, and software licenses, sold for a fraction of their original cost. Sarah successfully bid on TechFlow's technical documentation and proprietary code repositories, paying $37,000 for intellectual property that had taken years to develop. The purchase was purely strategic, ensuring that no other company could acquire TechFlow's technical assets and potentially compete with Quantum. But the most satisfying moment came when the auctioneer offered TechFlow's corporate name and trademark. Sarah bid $1,500 and won, giving Quantum ownership of the TechFlow brand itself. Walking out of the bankruptcy auction, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. 8 months earlier, she had been a loyal employee building systems for a company that didn't value her contributions. Now she was a corporate executive who had orchestrated the complete destruction of that same company. The transformation was complete. TechFlow Dynamics no longer existed, except as a subsidiary of Quantum Solutions, a subsidiary that existed only on paper, its assets absorbed and its employees scattered. Sarah Martinez had achieved something remarkably rare in corporate America: perfect revenge. 6 months after TechFlow's bankruptcy auction, Sarah stood in the executive boardroom of Quantum Solutions, presenting the quarterly results that would cement her reputation as one of the industry's most successful strategic acquisitions specialists. The numbers on the screen told a story of transformation that went far beyond simple corporate revenge. The former TechFlow client portfolio has generated $42 million in revenue this quarter, Sarah announced to the assembled board members. That's a 37% increase over TechFlow's historical performance with the same clients. Board member Catherine Williams leaned forward with interest. What's driving that improvement? Infrastructure efficiency and service. Reliability. Aurora Aerospace has expanded their contract twice since migration, adding services they couldn't access through TechFlow's limited capabilities. Zenith has integrated 3 additional business units onto our platform. Pinnacle's manufacturing optimization project, which stalled under TechFlow's management, is now ahead of schedule and under budget. Dr. Walsh smiled with obvious pride. Sarah, these results exceed our most optimistic projections from the original acquisition analysis. The projections were conservative because they assumed we'd inherit TechFlow's technical limitations. By rebuilding rather than inheriting, we eliminated those constraints entirely. What Sarah didn't mention was the personal satisfaction of seeing her former clients thriving under competent technical leadership. Aurora's systems now operated with 99.7% uptime. Zenith's security incidents had dropped to 0. Pinnacle's manufacturing efficiency had improved by 23%. The clients weren't just receiving better service, they were achieving business results that TechFlow's failing infrastructure had made impossible. After the board meeting, Sarah returned to her corner office on the 42nd floor of Quantum's headquarters. The view overlooked Seattle's tech corridor, including the building where TechFlow had once operated. That building now housed a startup incubator, the TechFlow offices having been divided into smaller spaces for companies that might someday grow large enough to become Quantum acquisition targets. Sarah's assistant knocked on the door. "Ms. Martinez, you have a visitor. Rebecca Liu from our technical operations team says it's regarding the TechFlow personnel integration report." Rebecca entered with a thick folder and a satisfied expression. As one of the former TechFlow employees, who had successfully transitioned to Quantum, she had become Sarah's unofficial liaison to the other refugees from the collapsed company. "Sarah, I wanted to give you an update on how the former TechFlow team members are adjusting." Sarah gestured to the chairs across from her desk. "How many have we successfully integrated?" 14 out of the 23 who applied. The others found positions with different companies or decided to leave the industry entirely. But the ones who stayed are thriving. Rebecca opened her folder and began reviewing individual cases. Marcus Rodriguez has been promoted to Senior Systems Architect. Jennifer Walsh personally recruited him for the Defense Contracts Division. David Park is leading the database optimization project that's saving Aurora $2 million annually in processing costs. Even Trevor Hayes found his niche. Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Trevor landed somewhere?" "Quality assurance. Turns out his obsessive attention to detail makes him excellent at finding bugs and inconsistencies. He's actually grateful for the career change. Said the management pressure was destroying his health." The irony was perfect. Trevor had been promoted beyond his capabilities at TechFlow, struggling with responsibilities he wasn't equipped to handle. At Quantum, he found a role that matched his skills and temperament, becoming more productive and less stressed. What about the executives? Patterson, Chen, the others? Rebecca's expression darkened. Mixed results. Patterson took early retirement after burning through his severance trying to start a consulting company. Linda Chen found a position with a smaller firm, but took a significant pay cut. The real casualty was Robert Blackwood, the Meridian consultant. His reputation was destroyed when the TechFlow collapse became a business school case study. 3 major consulting firms rescinded job offers after his role in the disaster became public knowledge. He's apparently working for a regional accounting firm now, doing basic efficiency audits. Sarah felt a cold satisfaction. Blackwood had treated her termination as a routine cost optimization, displaying the same indifference toward human value that characterized his entire profession. Learning that his career had suffered consequences provided closure she hadn't expected to need, but Sarah's greatest triumph wasn't professional, it was personal. She had transformed from a disposable employee into an indispensable executive, building something far more impressive than anything she could have achieved at TechFlow. Her current project epitomized that transformation. Quantum was developing an integrated aerospace and defense platform that would standardize the custom solutions Sarah had previously built individually for each client. The platform would serve dozens of companies simultaneously, generating revenue that dwarfed TechFlow's historical performance. "Rebecca, I want to show you something," Sarah said, turning her monitor so they could both see the screen. "This is the architecture diagram for Project Constellation." The diagram showed a comprehensive ecosystem of interconnected services, each designed to solve problems that had plagued the aerospace industry for decades. Real-time supply chain integration, predictive maintenance algorithms, automated compliance reporting, and secure communication protocols, all built on infrastructure that could scale to serve hundreds of clients simultaneously. "This is incredible," Rebecca whispered. "It's like everything we tried to build at TechFlow, but actually done right." "It's better than that. TechFlow's approach was reactive. We solved problems after they occurred. Constellation is predictive. It prevents problems from happening." Sarah clicked through several screens showing performance projections, market analysis, and competitive positioning. Project Constellation wasn't just a product, it was a platform that would dominate the aerospace technology market for the next decade. The beta testing begins next month with Aurora, Zenith, and Pinnacle. If the results match our projections, we'll have 50 enterprise clients by year-end. "Sarah, this could make Quantum the dominant player in aerospace technology. That's the goal." 3 weeks later, Sarah received an unexpected call from Marcus Rodriguez. He was calling from Aurora Aerospace, where he was consulting on their integration with Project Constellation. "Sarah, you need to hear this. Elizabeth Parker just finished reviewing the Constellation beta, and she's ecstatic. The platform is delivering results they didn't think were possible." "What kind of results?" "Supply chain optimization that's saving them $15 million annually. Predictive maintenance that's reduced unplanned downtime by 68%. Quality control algorithms that caught 3 potential safety issues before they became problems." Sarah smiled. Project Constellation was exceeding even her optimistic projections, validating the decision to rebuild everything from scratch rather than trying to salvage TechFlow's legacy systems. "Marcus, there's something else. Parker mentioned that Aurora's board is considering a strategic partnership with Quantum, not just as a service provider, but as a technology development partner." The implications were staggering. Aurora Aerospace was a $15 billion company with global operations and government contracts. A strategic partnership would position Quantum as a major player in the aerospace industry, far beyond their current status as a regional technology provider. Did she provide any details? "Aurora wants exclusive access to Constellation's advanced features in exchange for co-development funding and preferential partnership terms. They're talking about a 5-year agreement worth over $200 million. Sarah ended the call and sat back in her chair, processing the magnitude of what Marcus had described. 2 years earlier, she had been building custom solutions for Aurora as a mid-level TechFlow employee. Now she was positioned to negotiate a strategic partnership that would transform both companies. The vindication was complete. TechFlow had fired Sarah to reduce costs and improve efficiency, but those decisions had actually eliminated their competitive advantages while creating opportunities for superior alternatives. The Aurora partnership negotiations began the following month, with Sarah leading Quantum's technical team through detailed discussions about platform development, intellectual property sharing, and long-term strategic cooperation. The complexity of the agreement required months of analysis, but the potential benefits justified the investment. During one particularly crucial meeting, Elizabeth Parker made a comment that crystallized the irony of the entire situation. "Sarah, I have to say that losing you from TechFlow was the best thing that could have happened to Aurora's technology infrastructure. The difference between what we had then and what we have now is extraordinary." "I appreciate that, Elizabeth. Sometimes, major changes create unexpected opportunities. It's more than that. TechFlow's problems forced us to find better solutions, and Quantum's capabilities exceeded anything we imagined was possible." Sarah nodded, understanding that Elizabeth was describing the unintended consequences of corporate short-sightedness. TechFlow had optimized for short-term cost reduction without considering long-term competitive implications, creating vulnerabilities that their more strategic competitors could exploit. The Aurora Partnership Agreement was finalized on a Friday afternoon in March, exactly 2 years after Sarah's termination from TechFlow. The signing ceremony took place in Quantum's executive conference room, with representatives from both companies celebrating what industry analysts were calling a transformative alliance for aerospace technology innovation. Dr. Walsh raised her glass during the celebration dinner. "Sarah, this partnership represents the culmination of everything we hoped to achieve when we hired you. You've transformed a problematic acquisition into a strategic triumph." "Thank you, Jennifer. But this is just the beginning. Project Constellation has the potential to revolutionize how aerospace companies approach technology integration." As the evening wound down, Sarah found herself alone on Quantum's executive terrace, looking out over the city lights. The building that had once housed TechFlow was visible in the distance, now occupied by companies pursuing their own dreams of technological success. Sarah had achieved something remarkable. She had transformed professional destruction into personal triumph, corporate betrayal into strategic victory. The company that had discarded her expertise was gone, while she had risen to heights that would have been impossible within TechFlow's limited vision. But perhaps the most satisfying aspect of her journey was the realization that she had become exactly the kind of executive she had always wanted to work for. Someone who understood that technical expertise was irreplaceable, that employee value couldn't be optimized away, and that long-term success required investing in capabilities rather than cutting costs. The revenge was complete, but the transformation was just beginning. 3 years after TechFlow's collapse, Sarah Martinez stood before an audience of 800 technology executives at the National Aerospace Innovation Summit in Washington, D.C. Her keynote speech, titled "Strategic Value Creation Through Technical Excellence," had become one of the most requested presentations in the industry. The irony wasn't lost on her that she was now recognized as an expert on the very principles that TechFlow had ignored when they terminated her employment. The aerospace industry loses approximately $14 billion annually due to preventable system failures, Sarah told the audience. These failures aren't caused by technological limitations, they're caused by organizational decisions that prioritize short-term cost optimization over long-term capability development. The presentation slides showed case studies from Project Constellation, which had grown from a beta platform serving 3 clients to an industry standard used by 47 aerospace companies across 6 countries. The platform's success had transformed Quantum Solutions from a regional technology provider into a global leader in aerospace systems integration. "When we analyzed failed technology implementations," Sarah continued, "we discovered a consistent pattern. Organizations that treated technical expertise as a disposable commodity inevitably experienced system degradation, client dissatisfaction, and competitive disadvantage." Several audience members nodded knowingly. The TechFlow syndrome had become a recognized phenomenon in business schools and consulting circles, a cautionary tale about the dangers of cost-cutting measures that eliminated irreplaceable institutional knowledge. After her presentation, Sarah was approached by Dr. Michael Harrison, the Chief Technology Officer of Meridian Defense Systems, one of the largest aerospace contractors in the United States. "Ms. Martinez, I was hoping we could discuss a potential consulting opportunity. Meridian is evaluating our technology infrastructure, and your expertise with aerospace systems integration would be invaluable." Sarah accepted Harrison's business card with polite interest. "What specific challenges is Meridian facing?" "We're concerned about technical debt in our legacy systems. Our current platforms serve our needs, but we're questioning whether they can scale to meet future requirements. Have you considered external consulting to evaluate your options?" Harrison's expression darkened slightly. We tried that approach 2 years ago, hired Meridian Consulting Group to assess our operational efficiency. Their recommendations nearly destroyed our technical capabilities before we realized the damage they were causing. Sarah maintained her neutral expression, but internally she felt a surge of satisfaction. Meridian Consulting Group, Robert Blackwood's former firm, had apparently learned nothing from the TechFlow disaster. What made you realize the consulting recommendations were problematic? They suggested eliminating 30% of our engineering staff as redundant technical positions. We terminated 12 senior engineers before discovering that those positions weren't redundant. They were critical. It took us 18 months and significant client relationship damage to rebuild our capabilities. I see. And now you're looking for a different approach? Exactly. We want technical leadership that understands the difference between cost optimization and capability destruction. Sarah agreed to meet with Meridian's executive team the following month. The consulting opportunity represented more than just another project. It was validation that the industry had learned from TechFlow's mistakes. But Sarah's greatest professional triumph came unexpectedly, through a phone call from Dr. Jennifer Walsh on a Tuesday morning in November. Sarah, I have news that I think you'll find interesting. The board of directors has approved a proposal that affects your future with Quantum. What kind of proposal? We want to spin off the aerospace division as an independent company, with you as chief executive officer. The new entity would focus exclusively on aerospace and defense technology platforms, with initial funding of $500 million. Sarah was momentarily speechless. Walsh was offering her the opportunity to build and lead her own company, backed by Quantum's resources and client relationships. Jennifer, that's unexpected. What prompted this decision? Project Constellation's success has exceeded every projection. The platform generates more revenue than Quantum's traditional business lines combined, and the growth trajectory suggests it could become a multi-billion-dollar market opportunity. Walsh continued explaining the proposal. The new company, tentatively named Constellation Systems, would inherit all aerospace-related clients, intellectual property, and development projects. Sarah would have complete operational control, with Quantum maintaining a minority ownership stake. The board believes you've earned the right to build something independently. Your vision for aerospace technology integration has proven more valuable than anyone anticipated. The offer represented everything Sarah had dreamed of during her years at TechFlow: the resources to build cutting-edge technology platforms, the authority to make strategic decisions without corporate interference, and the opportunity to create lasting value in an industry she understood better than most. Sarah accepted the offer immediately. The announcement of Constellation Systems' formation sent shockwaves through the aerospace technology sector. Industry analysts called it the most significant new company launch in aerospace technology in over a decade. Pre-launch client commitments exceeded $2 billion, with major aerospace manufacturers and defense contractors expressing interest in exclusive partnership agreements. Sarah's first decision as CEO was hiring Rebecca Liu as Chief Technology Officer and Marcus Rodriguez as Vice President of Engineering. Both had thrived since leaving TechFlow's dysfunction, and Sarah trusted their technical judgment and organizational loyalty. We're building something completely different here, Sarah told her new executive team during their first strategy meeting. Not just better technology, but better organizational principles. Technical expertise is our core competitive advantage, not a cost center to be optimized. The cultural foundation Sarah established at Constellation Systems reflected everything she had learned from TechFlow's failure. Engineers were valued as strategic assets rather than replaceable resources. Technical decisions were made by people who understood the underlying systems. Long-term capability development took precedence over short-term cost reduction. Within 6 months, Constellation Systems had recruited top-tier talent from throughout the aerospace industry. Senior engineers left established companies to join Sarah's team, attracted by the opportunity to work with cutting-edge technology under leadership that understood their value. The company's first major announcement came at the following year's Aerospace Innovation Summit. Sarah unveiled Constellation Platform 2.0, a comprehensive ecosystem that integrated supply chain management, predictive analytics, quality control, and regulatory compliance into a single, seamless solution. Traditional aerospace technology platforms solve individual problems in isolation, Sarah explained to the packed auditorium. Constellation 2.0 treats aerospace operations as an integrated ecosystem, optimizing performance across all business functions simultaneously. The demonstration showed real-time optimization scenarios that would have been impossible with legacy systems. Supply chain disruptions automatically triggered alternative sourcing protocols. Predictive maintenance algorithms prevented equipment failures before they occurred. Quality control systems identified potential issues during manufacturing rather than after delivery. The audience response was overwhelming. Within 24 hours of the announcement, Constellation Systems received inquiries from 63 aerospace companies requesting implementation timelines and pricing information. But the most satisfying moment of Sarah's professional journey came during a private conversation after her presentation. Elizabeth Parker, now Aurora Aerospace's Chief Technology Officer, approached Sarah with a proposal that completed the circle of transformation. Sarah, Aurora's board has authorized me to discuss something significant. We want to acquire a 20% equity stake in Constellation Systems. That's a substantial investment, Elizabeth. Aurora has grown 37% since implementing your platforms. Our board recognizes that access to Constellation's technology gives us competitive advantages that justify significant investment. Parker continued outlining Aurora's proposal. Beyond the equity investment, they wanted exclusive access to Constellation's next-generation platforms, joint development agreements for aerospace-specific applications, and guaranteed technical support for Aurora's global operations. The financial terms are generous, but more importantly, this partnership would position Constellation as Aurora's preferred technology provider for all future projects. Sarah accepted Aurora's proposal, finalizing an agreement that valued Constellation Systems at over $2 billion, less than 2 years after its formation. Standing in her corner office on the 38th floor of Constellation's Seattle headquarters, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, she could see Quantum Solutions building in the distance, where she had planned TechFlow's systematic destruction and built the foundation for her current success. The transformation was complete, but it had evolved far beyond simple revenge. Sarah had created something genuinely valuable, a company that solved real problems for important clients while treating technical expertise as the strategic asset it actually was. Her assistant knocked on the door. "Ms. Martinez, there's someone here to see you. Says he's from your former company." Sarah looked up with curiosity. "Which former company?" "TechFlow Dynamics." Intrigued, Sarah agreed to the meeting. The visitor was a man in his 50s she didn't recognize, carrying a briefcase and wearing the nervous expression of someone delivering bad news. "Ms. Martinez, I'm David Foster, bankruptcy trustee for TechFlow Dynamics. I'm here regarding the intellectual property you purchased at the bankruptcy auction. What about it?" "There's been a development. We've discovered additional assets that weren't included in the original bankruptcy proceedings. Technical documentation and proprietary code that might have significant value." Sarah listened as Foster explained that TechFlow's former office building had been renovated, and construction workers had discovered a storage room containing backup servers and development archives that had been overlooked during the bankruptcy process. "The question is whether you're interested in purchasing these additional assets. Given your success with Constellation Systems, they might have value for your current operations." Sarah almost smiled. Even in death, TechFlow continued to provide opportunities for her advancement. "What kind of timeline are we discussing?" "The auction is scheduled for next month. Given your previous purchase of TechFlow's assets, you'd have first option to bid." Sarah agreed to review the asset inventory, Though she doubted the additional materials would be useful, Constellation's technology had evolved far beyond anything TechFlow had developed, but owning the complete archive would ensure that no competitor could access whatever innovations Sarah had created during her time there. The final TechFlow auction was sparsely attended, with Sarah the only serious bidder for the discovered assets. She purchased the remaining intellectual property for $12,000, officially acquiring every piece of technology that TechFlow had ever developed. Driving away from the auction, Sarah realized that she now owned the complete remains of the company that had once discarded her. TechFlow Dynamics existed only as intellectual property in Constellation Systems archives, a corporate ghost that served as a reminder of the consequences of strategic short-sightedness. The story had reached its natural conclusion. Sarah Martinez had transformed from a terminated employee into a successful CEO, building an industry-leading company while the organization that wronged her had disappeared entirely. But perhaps the most important outcome wasn't the destruction of TechFlow or the creation of Constellation Systems. It was the demonstration that technical expertise, when properly valued and strategically applied, could create extraordinary results. Sarah had proven that the most expensive cost-cutting measure any technology company could implement was eliminating the people who understood how their systems actually worked. The lesson would outlast both TechFlow's failure and Constellation's success. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.